Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we got some big news earlier today, I should say, on Thursday, April 1st, just throwing that date in there for people who don't know. It was announced about, I want to say a little bit less than an hour ago, that Roy Williams, head coach of UNC men's basketball program, as all of you know, has announced his retirement after 33 seasons and 903 wins during his career as a head coach. Obviously, 18 of those seasons came at UNC, where he posted 485 wins and 163 losses. And AJ, I'm going to go ahead and kick it to you here in a second, because you were in Indianapolis about 10 days ago for the tournament. And I'm just going to let you dive into it real quick and kind of explain that and kind of what you saw up there and whatnot.
Well, what I heard, I was in the airport. Carolina lost Friday, but my flight to return was Monday, so I stayed up there. And I was in the airport. In fact, I was driving to the airport, got the Walker Kessler news. So I pulled over to the side of the interstate.
Slammed on the brakes.
And I got my laptop out, but I had to go to the passenger seat because the steering wheel, and I had to write up the Walker Kessler thing on the side of the interstate in the passenger seat in a rental car with the engine running and the hazards on, right?
Life of a sports star.
So you know, look, you've been around for a few years now. You know how you're kind of always on call in this business.
Yeah, you never off. Yeah.
Stuff happens when you least expected it. So I thought, well, that's the biggest thing that's going to happen today. I just want to get to the airport, get checked in, get home, see my family. Well, when I'm sitting in the airport, in fact, I was walking to my gate. This is not even an hour later. I get a text from somebody whom I trust tremendously, and they said that they have a source that says that Roy Williams is going to retire. So, you know, I texted somebody else in the media whom I know and I trust, and wouldn't go take my news and try to break it on their own. They're more of a filter because they don't directly cover UNC. And I kind of ran it by them, and I made a couple of phone calls, and I was sort of going through the process of, okay, well, what do I do with this? It's not the kind of thing that's super easy to get confirmed. And even if you do get it confirmed, I like to treat my subjects with respect. Like in football and basketball recruiting, we almost always know when a football player or prospect is going to commit to Carolina or not, but we allow them to have their day, and we're not going to break it. There's nothing for us to gain by spoiling a 16 or 17-year-old's day. But there are also other storylines that come up where you just got to allow the person to have their moment. And I'm not saying that we knew he was going to retire.
No.
What I'm saying is we were getting stuff saying it was, and it was circulating in the Power 5 coaching circuit. Okay. Other staffs were hearing what we were hearing. That's where we were getting it from. Remember, you know, I've covered not just North Carolina in my career. I've covered a lot of schools. I've covered the ACC. When I was at Fox, I had a lot of contacts regionally, nationally, that kind of thing. So there are avenues that I can go when I get information just to try to find out what other people are hearing. And not a lot of people were hearing this, but they were in the coaching circles. And so no one was going to go on the record with it. And I hadn't actually gone to UNC with it. I was kind of waiting to see how things were going to play out, because I don't want to bug certain people over at Carolina about this.
Especially for something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, to be perfectly honest with you, that's the kind of thing that you're not going to really get confirmed by. And that's okay. And that's okay. The point is that 10 days ago, we started having conversations as a staff.
Yeah, we did.
You, Dina, David, and I discussed this, and we discussed the variance of it. Okay. We discussed, okay, what does this mean? And we're monitoring some of the communication going on. Well, a lot of people were calling for Armageddon in the program, and I don't think a guy who's graduating, who already played on senior day, who was a walk-on leaving, is Armageddon. I don't think a guy who hadn't played in 2 years is Armageddon.
It's not.
You know, a lot of stuff had to be discussed and laid out, so the kids in the program had an idea what was coming and what they were, if they stay, what they're staying for, and what the circumstances will be. So kind of let things play out. So are we shocked that this is happening? No. And honestly, we started discussing this as a possibility in February, late February, just, you know, some things we had sensed and seen, just because we have a lot of conversations about a lot of stuff. I don't ever want to get blindsided by something. So we discuss possibilities about all kinds of stuff all the time. Then, of course, the kiss the floor incident after Duke and all that, and
Yeah.
whether or not Roy knew something at the time, I don't know. We have a press conference with him later today. He'll be asked that, and he'll answer it, and I will take him at his word. I just think that it was time for him, and some people kind of had an idea that it was time. And as far as us, I was stunned. It was this morning. We were hopping on for a football Zoom with a couple of players. We had Cam Kelly and Jordan Tucker. I was hoping we were going to get Desmond Evans because I haven't talked to him since his press conference when he announced he was going to go to Carolina. So I was looking forward to that. And all of a sudden, Dina, who has got like her finger on the pulse of email,
yeah, I don't know how she saw
starts
that.
texting us about it. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm not doing this Zoom. I hopped off and tried to get my bearings straight.
You weren't the only one who hopped off. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people hopped off. So I'm surprised it came today and it was announced now. Not surprised it happened, Jacob. What I heard last Monday, and then I heard the 48 hours or so after that. If it would have happened then, it would have made a lot more sense than now. Because once it kind of died down, and Caleb Love said he's going to stay, and there wasn't much other movement, we started thinking, well, maybe he's going to. He didn't want to leave getting routed by Wisconsin. He doesn't want to leave going 32-31 in his last 63 games. He doesn't want to leave in a season like they just had. I think he would want to have normality, but maybe all of those reasons are factors into why he's leaving, and maybe just looking at the landscape of the sport and some other things. I don't want to sit here and talk for 12 minutes straight, but we'll get into it here in a minute about the sport and about his place in it and all that kind of stuff. But I will say this: kudos to him for making this decision on his own. I've covered Roy. I was at Roy's introductory press conference, and I don't know. I mean,
might be the only one that was covered both with the.
What that means is that this stuff here is going to start spreading. Okay, it means that I'm getting old.
Man. You're a vet.
I am a vet. I've had a relationship with Roy, media coach, that has kind of had some ebbs and flows. And I've really appreciated the direction it's gone in the last few years. I have an unbelievable amount of respect for Roy on so many levels. And the fact that I got better as a journalist covering him. And I think that the way he reacted to some of the things that I did and said and wrote helped me get better. And I'm a big believer that, just because you have the power of the pen doesn't mean that you stop learning and stop growing. And sometimes your subject is right, and sometimes you're wrong. And I learned that from Roy, and I learned that from Steve. And as a result, I'm a better journalist now than I was 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah. Certainly 2009, the F-bomb incident and all that kind of stuff.
Classic video, man. It's a classic video.
We could go on and on and on, but I cherish those experiences because I got better, and it's been an absolute honor and a privilege and a pleasure and a joy and a treat to cover somebody as incredible at what he does as Roy Williams. And Roy's not just incredible at what he does, but he's a fun guy to cover.
Yeah, he is. I've always enjoyed Roy, yeah.
I know Brett Freelander will back me on this, that one of the things we missed this year not being in person with Roy so much and everything on Zoom is those drop the mic moments in press conferences.
Classic, man.
I mean, he's a funny guy. Hell of a
you get what you get with Roy. What you see is what you get with Roy. I mean, it really is.
It really is. Would people think – I've had people in the national media, especially at NCAA tournaments. It's funny. When I was covering Duke in the tournament, they'd ask me, is Coach K really this way? What's he like? Covering Roy a lot more in the NCAA tournaments. Is he really that way? Is he fake? He just seems kind of fake now.
No, he's not.
Maybe it's Pep Sprite now and not Coke, but it's a Coke cup.
Yeah.
I could see Roy on the front porch, chewing the fat, telling stories, very comfortable with his buddies from back home and some of his other buddies. He's accrued over the course of time. What you see is what you get. And we'll get into all that kind of stuff here in a few minutes, but I know that's long-winded, but just sort of processing this as we do this podcast, because this is an hour, not even an hour old. And even though we had a lot of stuff on the radar, it's still huge news, enormous news.
Exactly.
And we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, exactly. We've been talking about it, like you mentioned, off camera for the last, couple weeks from when you kind of had initially heard the rumors in Indianapolis, and I've mentioned this one to you a couple of times. I've always compared the situation to what Mike Fox did. And for those who don't know, Mike Fox is the baseball coach, longtime baseball coach at UNC, retired this past year. And when I started hearing the rumors for you, I said, okay, and the reason I'll mention Mike Fox here in a second, but I say if any year would make you kind of maybe want to have a little more free time, enjoy spending time with your family because of how COVID went down and because there was that such a prolonged period of where, Roy and every coach across the country was at home, sitting home and doing nothing. And what happened with Mike Fox in a kind of a similar way was, from what I understand, was one of the reasons he ended up retiring was because, he had got that taste of, sitting at home and doing nothing and spending time with your family, something that especially coaches that coach at this high level do not get to do. I mean, Roy Williams is a guy that's recruiting, 365 days a year, coaching, no days off with him really. So I've always kind of thought of it in my head in terms of, if any year similar to what Mike Fox would do would make you realize that, hey, maybe there's things I want to do. Roy hit 70, getting a little bit older. Maybe I want to spend time with my family. Maybe I want to have a little bit more free time in my personal life over these next few years. And even the landscape, which I want you to touch on here in a second with how the transfer portal has opened up, how just taxing this past year was with the restrictions of players, what they could and couldn't do, no fans in the stands, traveling was so much different, so much more hectic in a lot of ways. If any year might make you sit back and say, you know what, maybe it's time for me to hang it up and explore some other things in my personal life and spend more time with my family, like I mentioned. I mean, if any year would make you do that, I think this past year would. So it's not earth shattering, and from what we've heard and from just that, you know what I mean? It's not really a huge surprise.
I don't know. I know that in the media, a lot of people know what Roy's life is like during the season. Yeah. But Roy is on the go.
Oh, yeah.
Go. I remember, a couple of years ago, I was up in Chicago. It was Kobe White's freshman year. Mm-hmm. They played Kentucky up there. And I remember Roy getting through his presser, and I remember seeing him in the back foul hallway, after the presser. And I think Steve said something about, Roy's got to hurry up because he's going up to Minnesota to see a kid.
Yeah, got to go watch a kid real quick. Yeah.
I travel, and I'm on almost every road game, and it's not uncommon because of the part of the country he's already in, especially a Saturday game. If it's not a night game, to go see a kid in that region after the game. So the team may fly home. Roy's going to see a kid, and they could practice at 2:00 or be done with practice at 3:00, 4:00 on a Tuesday afternoon. Roy could be in Missouri that night watching a kid play and then come home and sleep in his own bed. And he goes to see his former players all the time. Yeah, not just in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody's seen the clip of him when Kobe was struggling his rookie year. Roy went up to support him, and Kobe, I guess, had a good game, and he gives Roy a hug afterward. And you could find that everywhere. And that is his life. He is an in-person recruiter. He is an in-person relationship guy. He wants to be around people. That's one of his strengths. In the last year, he couldn't do that. He's doing Zoom all the time. It's not the same. And he couldn't go support his guys. He couldn't go watch these kids. I remember when he told the story about when he brought in Christian Keeling 2 years ago, that he couldn't see Christian play. He wants to see these kids play. He even told the story about Andrew Platek as I sidebar myself after sidebarring. That's a double sidebar right there. He said that, based on film, he wouldn't have offered Andrew Platek, but he went and saw him. I guess it was at the Peach Jam, and he saw some of the other intangibles, and that's why he offered. And Roy doesn't throw out offers like candy on Halloween.
No, definitely not.
Because he looks for certain things that connect with him. You can't see that on video. You can't get that from Zoom. And he wasn't able to fully be Roy Williams, the basketball coach. And in part, Roy Williams, the guy, because that's part of what has fueled him. He's a relationship guy. Coach, some people make fun of coaches. They make cracks when they say that it's about relationships and family. I'm telling you guys, I don't care what the program is. Even the programs that are not successful and the coach is in and out in 4 or 5 years. Sidney Lowe was at NC State for 5 years. He tried to make it about relationships. He tried to make it a family. He tried to have that culture. And there was a semblance of that culture that he was able be successful with
Yeah.
because he's such a nice guy. Okay. When Roy talks about relationships and when you hear other coaches talk about it, it is 100% real.
100%.
That's how really good people
Mm-hmm.
have a better chance of being consistently successful than those who are not,
Mm-hmm.
because the average person can sniff that out. So Roy's natural instinct is to go see guys. I want to see him 5 or 6 times before I offer. People, we hear it all the time, Jacob. Why doesn't he offer him already? People are talking about Jonas and Dew already about that. Why doesn't he just offer him?
Yeah.
Because he's got a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proven process, and it's one that fits him who he is. It is who he is. It's not a guy who said, well, Dean did it this way, so I'm going to do it that way. Roy has long said, look, I'm not very innovative, but I'm a really good copycat. But I'll tell you right now, I've watched Dean's for years. I actually covered my first year in this business was Dean's last year. And Roy does a lot of things that Dean did, but he does them differently. He does them tailored to Roy's way, and it has worked. So I think that there's probably something about being home with Wanda and not being on the road. Wanda went with him on a lot of those trips. I mean, I would imagine that they ate arena popcorn on their dates a lot more than most couples have.
Yeah, 100%.
And the grandkids. Jenna Miller got a great photo last season.
Yep.
When we were pre-pandemic, of Roy sitting on the bench when his team was warming up. He's got a grandchild on his knee, and another one right here. That's the biggest smile I saw from him all year.
100%.
I love that photo. In fact, let's run that photo on our site today because it's a great photo, because that's a little snapshot into Roy Williams being Roy Williams, not just Roy Williams, the basketball coach who is the caretaker of this massive thing called North Carolina basketball, which was massive before he became the head coach. It will be massive moving forward now with him not being the head coach. So I think it's cool that whatever the reasons are, they're going to be personal reasons, and he's going to get a chance to do a lot of the things that I know he loves doing. He's complained in recent years about not playing as much golf as he wants.
Yeah, you know the man loves golf. I mean, come on.
2 years ago, he's recruiting transfers.
Yeah.
He could have been playing golf. He may have gone to the Masters for a day or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you he's going to be at the Masters next week.
Yeah, man. I'll be all over the place.
And if he sees Taylor Zarzer, Taylor will remind him that he used to ask him golf-related questions, golf-themed questions in press conferences back in the day, and Roy appreciated it. So, yeah, I think you hit on something. I think getting a chance to see a different side of life could have been a factor. I'm not going to speak for Roy. We're going to find out later today.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of factors that went into it. You're not Roy Williams. You just up one day and say, I'm done. There are a lot of things that went into it. And I'm sure that this is something that he's thought about when he's on his walks, those 45-minute walks around the concourse at the Smith Center.
Yeah, this wasn't a spur of the moment thing. Like he woke up this morning and was like, I'm just not really feeling it. I don't think it was that, I
just think there were a lot of mornings he woke up and maybe he just wasn't feeling it. And for other reasons, it wasn't just the struggles of the team. I think a lot of people are going to make a lot out of that. The next thing we'll get into is kind of Roy doesn't owe anybody anything anymore. And that's also, I think, part of this as well.
Yeah, definitely not. I think you told a good story. And I don't know if it's a story necessarily, but you've always kind of told me that after he won that 2000, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of winning it in 2017, didn't you, even you said you kind of saw a different side of Roy after that, a more kind of, okay, I've accomplished what I needed to accomplish. I'm at peace with what I've done in the sport. I know you've kind of mentioned that to me off camera a couple of times, and I don't know, I might be butchering that story.
No. It's an observation.
Yeah, observation, I should say.
Having been around this and close, just kind of, and also part of it, the way he was with media and everything else. And
before that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those conversations that other media have I've had with other media, like at NCAA tournaments and stuff like that, they haven't only asked just about, is this old Roy thing just an act? They would talk about other things too. And there are a lot of people that didn't really respect him as a coach. They thought he was a roll out the ball and let guys play, which is insane if you know the sport.
It's
if you understand the sport and you see what they're doing, that's utter insanity.
Mm-hmm.
People say, he's stubborn, he never changes. Well, he went stretch 4 and 13, stretch 4 and 14, stretch 4 and 18, stretch 4 and 19.
Yeah,
and people are screaming and yelling, he'll never change. He's too old school. He changes in the course of games.
Mm-hmm.
He may not do it when some people want him to, because Roy wants to have absolute intel.
Mm-hmm.
when he makes some of these changes in the past. People say, well, Kendall Marshall, Larry Drew. Well, you just don't make a change. You have other dynamics within the walls of that locker
It's
room you've
not
got
that
to
simple. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
dealt with that this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't make blind changes because a bunch of people on Twitter think you should make a change.
Yeah, that's not how Roy works. Yeah.
But
Tweeter, as Roy would call it.
Tweeter, as Roy would call it. Yeah, I'm going to miss that.
Yeah.
The next guy should be mandatory. He says tweeter three
Yeah, he
times a
has
year.
to, man, in honor of Roy.
Dadgum 5 times a year, and then tells a few stories.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated. Way up.
What the heck's going on? Yeah. That's
exactly.
one of the things that's fun about covering Roy.
But I do think, though, that I don't remember what outlet it was. National site ran something like in 2015 that Roy was not very respected by some of his peers and whatever. I've never talked to another head coach who ever had a critical word about Roy Williams. And I know a couple. There's one I know in the ACC I've known for a long time. Unbelievable respect for Roy. Off the record, privately, absolute total respect for him as a coach. And there's something to say about a coach who you know what his team's going to do, and you still can't stop.
Can't stop it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, great people think great coaching is tweaking here and tweaking there, and the coaches on the sideline that are screaming and yelling and gyrating all the time. Boy, he's coaching hard. Well, the great coaches prepare their teams before that game so they can adjust during the course of games. Why does Roy not call timeouts a lot? Because he believes that his team is prepared to handle that. And if they're not, then they're going to use that stretch to learn to be prepared.
Exactly.
You can't, if you're constantly cleaning up after your child's never going to learn to clean up after themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that those have been some interesting things to watch how he handles stuff throughout his tenure, and to hear how other people talk about it and some in the media as well. Now, the criticism was that Roy, he won a title with Matt Doherty's guys. And then the 2019, which is coming up a lot now with Gonzaga's run, people are saying, well, the last great team like this that just mowed to the tournament was the 09 Tar Heels, and they were loaded. And even some people criticize Roy by saying, well, if Marcus Ginyard didn't get hurt in October, he would have started over Danny Green and they wouldn't have won the title. In 17, the cloud is hanging over.
Yep.
The NCAA cloud's hanging over. Recruiting had changed. The narrative about the program had changed. Trust me, it's amazing the stuff people were saying. It's amazing how uninformed so many people, including in the media, were and still are about what happened. But the program got a little more insulated because they never had the us against the world mentality, but I think they adopted a little bit of that. And they lose in 16 the way they do. They come back and win it in 17. And I think, and I don't know this for sure, this is just my opinion by observing, I think he felt a little bit whole. He felt justified, vindicated by that title, because that wasn't the kind of roster he had in 05. That wasn't the kind of roster he had in 09. That wasn't the kind of roster Dean had in 82. And it was a little similar to Dean's roster in 93, where there wasn't a ton of high-end star power, even though Justin Jackson was ACC Player of the Year. But Justin didn't just blow you up and say, wow, star power written all over him.
Yeah.
He won it with a team. Mm-hmm. And he won it with a team doing the Roy Williams stuff at a very high level. And so I think he felt a little bit more at ease with that. Mm-hmm. And it was his first title post-Dean, after Dean had passed. So, and I think that was something. Look, we all have accomplishments in our lives that make us feel a little bit different about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And it would be totally human nature for Roy to look at the 2017 accomplishment, especially what they were going through, stuff that was being said. Dean died 2 years earlier, and the way they'd lost the year before, and they came back and they got it. Mm-hmm. And if you remember that comment that Roy made almost a year ago in the Michael Jordan series that ESPN ran, when he was talking about, that Jordan he never let up. Mm-hmm. Well, that team personified that mindset. And Jordan wasn't the only one in the program that had that mindset. That is Roy's approach to things.
Yeah.
And so I do think that title, hugely important to him. And I do think it changed the way people thought about him outside of the Carolina window.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always thought that your observation on that was interesting in terms of that, because obviously I started November 2018 working here at Tar Heel Illustrated, so I got a couple years of covering Roy and whatnot. But just to hear kind of going back to that, it's always been interesting for me. Last thing I kind of want to bring up before we wrap this one up, because it's on people's minds. It's going to be on people's minds. Who's next? Who's next up for who's going to replace Roy? And out of respect for Roy and what he's done, we're not going to dive into that on this podcast at all. But it is an interesting question. It is. I know I'll kind of let you discuss it. I know you have heard a few names kind of being tossed around and whatnot. And it's obviously going to be big shoes to fill when you're having to, replace a guy like Roy Williams, who spent 18 seasons there and 3 national championships and was successful as it has been. But like I mentioned, out of respect for him, we're not going to dive into who those guys may be. But it's something that's going to have to be discussed, and I would assume it'll be something that'll probably be wrapped up sooner rather than later. One would think, just kind of knowing Roy and knowing the program.
Yeah, and just to clarify what you were just saying, Roy deserves his day.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys that are watching this, people on social media, people on our message boards, have at it. I mean, that's natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural to wonder who the next guy is going to be.
Yeah, it's human nature.
I'm cool with that.
Times, yeah.
You know what? When the Orioles fire their manager here in about 5 months, I'm going to wonder right away who the next guy is going to be, because I'm a fan, and that's what fans do.
Exactly.
But 18 years of covering Roy, what he's done for this program. You look around, guys. UCLA just got to a Final Four as an 11 seed. Look at their track since Wooden left. They've had some guys flare up. They've had some success, but they've had one national title since Wooden left.
Yeah.
So they went to a title game in '80 with Larry Brown, who played for Tar Heel, played for Dean Smith. They played in a title. They won the title in '95 under Jim Herrick. And then they were in the title game. I guess it was 07, lost to Florida in the title game. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky has won 1 title under Calipari. They've won 2 titles since Joby Hall beat Duke, I guess. No, they won 3. Pitino won, Tubby Smith won, and Calipari won one. My point is that they've had their down periods as well. They had the Gillespie period. And they've had to go through guys, and they may have to make a change in the next few years again with Calipari. So what Roy did for Carolina, they had the brief dip, but then when Roy came on board, it went right back to where it was.
Yeah.
And you could argue that in the postseason, Roy was better than Dean Smith. You could make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
Dean was very much about the journey, and Roy was obviously about the journey too. But Roy, I think, mission to get that title. Let's get that banner. Yeah. Different era, different times. But I think he's Dean's equal. And anybody who wants to criticize 32 and 31 the last 63 games, they're missing the big picture. He gave North Carolina 3 national titles. Since he's been at North Carolina, he's got the most titles, the most Final Fours, the most NCAA tournament wins. He's the fastest guy to 900 wins. All right.
Not too bad, right?
Yeah, not too bad. And I think he's grown and changed as a coach.
Yeah.
He had a number 1 seed 2 years ago with a stretch 4.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't like to talk about that. Yeah.
No, well, because it's really easy to parrot the conventional narrative that is usually not always laced in truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's easy that way. It's low-hanging fruit. Twitter has forced us into a low-hanging fruit way of thinking.
Everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
Because if you want to go a little deeper, you can't do it in 240 characters. And if you put 5 tweets up there, people are like, "What the hell? I'm not going to read all this."
Yeah, exactly.
So no one ever gets to it.
Mm-hmm.
So unbelievable coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Definitely.
Genuine. His players didn't always like his approach, but they understood it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name names right now, but they understood that but once he figured out how to push their buttons,
he was going to do it.
They were amazing relationships.
Yeah.
The kids believed in him. They trusted him. They understood the track record. And up until the last couple of years when everybody's transferring from everywhere, he went a long time without having one. And there's a reason why.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad for Roy. I'm sad for us because I enjoyed covering him.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited because we get to cover something really unique and different. And Jacob, you're going to get to cover something that's a big challenge for you in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to have, layer these experiences, which is what it's all about. So I'm happy for Roy. I'm happy for Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad that he did this on his own. Very few can do it on their own. Most coaches get hired. They have these great celebration press conferences. and most of them don't get to determine when they leave.
No, yeah.
So when a guy like Roy can determine when he leaves, Lon Kruger did that here last week. Didn't have the same impact at Oklahoma, obviously, that Roy's had at Carolina, but he got to leave on his own. Roy gets to leave on his own. I think Carolina fans should only be positive about this because he's given you more than you ever could have hoped for. Because remember, when he was hired, people said Roy Williams couldn't win the big one.
Mm-hmm.
3.
Mm-hmm.
I covered 4 of his teams in national title games. So that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, it was cool to get to cover, at least from my perspective. Like I mentioned, I covered Roy for a couple of years, and it was awesome to see as, someone who grew up watching Carolina and ACC basketball.
Well, you know how I tell you that the year I covered Dean Smith, and I remember and I'll never forget the first question I ever asked him. Yeah, and his response, I'm not going to do it here, but you know what I've told you. You're in 25 years, you're going to recall Roy Williams. You're part of covering Roy Williams the way I recall my year of covering Dean Smith. And the further you get away from it, the more I cherish that, because how many people are walking around and cover Dean Smith? I mean, like I said at the beginning, it means I'm old and getting older, but you're going to get older too. And you're going to have this as a reference point for the rest of your career. And you're also covering Mac Brown, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's not a bad lineup, right?
Yeah, so I guess Mac's going to be the oldest coach on campus now.
Yeah. I guess Mac's the Hall of Famer on campus. So there's a few other Hall of Famers, I should say, but Mac's now the big man on campus officially. I think when it comes down to even although Anson Dorrance might have something to say about that, but
just so people know, we're going to discuss the next steps later.
Yeah, just not on this one. Yeah, just not on this one.
And Thursday evening we have a Zoom with Bubba Cunningham. Mm-hmm. You and I will be at the press conference today.
Yep. 4 p.m.
We'll just see how that goes. We might shoot something after that, and then we'll get Bubba this evening, and then we'll start moving the story forward. But right now, I have a couple of names. In fact, before I heard last month, we're not done yet. AJ's talking a lot. Imagine that. Okay, last Monday when I was in Indianapolis is when I heard about Roy might retire, right? And I was coming from coaching circles. 2 days before that, I'm on the phone with somebody when I was doing my drive up to Wisconsin, and I was pulling into Milwaukee, which I'd never been to before. And I pulled into a gas station, and I'm on the phone with someone for 25 minutes, and they told me about a conversation somebody that they know, an NBA scout had with somebody, and it was kind of wink, wink, North Carolina. And I thought, oh gosh, we're already getting that stuff now. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm just telling you that we were already starting to hear some weird stuff about people kind of inserting through the side door to insert their name in a North Carolina job.
Yeah.
This was 2 days before anybody had advanced anything to me about the possibility that Roy might retire. So I would suspect that there are people. It's amazing this stuff gets thrown around out there. That's why people need to be careful. And that's why we're going to be careful. We're not going to go there right now out of respect. And also because we're not really sure.
Yeah. That's what we do. We're not going to come on here and start telling you guys stuff if we're not sure about it. Yeah, it's just not what we do over here. So yeah, it's crazy day, AJ. Crazy day. I will leave it with this though. I want people to understand this. I was not necessarily if you take away anything from this podcast, it was not, from our perspective at least, it wasn't what happened today with Roy retiring wasn't really an earth-shattering thing.
That it happened today, it was. I mean,
April Fool's too, man. I'm thinking we might get to that press conference and you might be like, I was just kidding. Can you imagine?
That's what Dina said. Yo, it's April Fool's. They wouldn't play this joke, would they?
Yeah, not the greatest day. Not the greatest day to do it, but yeah. I don't think Roy really cared. Roy probably didn't even know it was April Fool's today, to be completely honest with you. So, no, the kind of guy Roy is. So
big day for him. It's a big day for him.
Big day for him. Absolutely.
It's gonna be an honor to be there. It really is.
It will. It'll be a really cool experience.
I was at his introductory press conference, and when I get off the Zoom here, I'm going to go and see if I can find some of my work from that.
Yeah.
And I wrote a column for the Star News from his press conference. So,
pretty sweet stuff, man.
Yeah, it's
not many people will say that. You might be the only one there that can say that. I mean, 18.
Well, in the media, I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure if someone like Bob Holliday's there, Brett Friedlander's there.
Yeah.
There might be a few others. I mean, Luke DeCock may have been there for that. Forgive me if I'm forgetting some because a lot of the old timers have gone in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
the press room's a lot younger now.
Definitely,
I'm like one of the old guys. I'm the guy with the pseudo walker now.
exactly. But I think it's a good place to wrap it up, AJ. And moving forward, coaching search, all that kind of stuff, coverage from the press conference. Just keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com and obviously our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. That's going to do it for us. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. And Roy Williams announcing on Thursday, April 1st, that he will be retiring from coaching. So as always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.